Hi, Mark.
Hello, Jeff.
Okay, so I live in Middlesex County, but that's about all I know about counties in Connecticut. What happened to county government in the state?
Well, considering that Connecticut prides itself as being the land of steady habits, Connecticut is actually the only state in the country that had counties and got rid of them.
When did that happen?
That happened in 1960.
And why did that happen?
A couple of reasons. Counties in Connecticut were never terribly strong. They go back way back in history. They are older than the country. They started when Connecticut was a colony. And they had limited powers of taxation. It was kind of weird. They couldn't tax people. They could tax governments, which would then turn around and tax their residents.
Right.
So they had limited services. They used to do the jails. They would have the early forms of welfare, that kind of thing. And they became known as kind of a big patronage place. The Democrats fashioned themselves as reformers who were going to get rid of what at the time was seen as somewhat as wasteful and ridden with patronage.
And looking back on it now, we hear a lot of talk these days about regionalization and ways in which our 169 different municipalities could better cooperate to find some efficiencies. What's the argument for not having counties today, a good 50 some odd years after they were eliminated?
Okay, you've touched on something that Connecticut is struggling with and has struggled with for a while, which is how do you have regionalization without county governments? Mm-hmm. Can you have the good parts of county governments without the overhead, without the patronage? You do have the push to go back to some regionalized services, although even that term has fallen out of favor. Now you will hear references to shared services. This has been a bipartisan thing. Rob Simmons, the former Republican congressman from the 2nd District, he is now a first selectman in Stonington. And that's a place that has gone big on regional services. They had a town sanitarian and public health director both retire about the same time. So they signed up with a regional group, and he says it's been great. One example is in a neighborhood they had an outbreak of rats. This regional public health entity sent in 7 sanitarians and helped quickly get a handle on this.
As opposed to the one sanitarian that he could have had before the
Exactly.
retirement.
So Rob Simmons says, no, this is a great thing.
There are a lot of people who listen who may live here but may not be from here, and a lot of the lore of Connecticut is that we are, fiercely independent, home rule kind of people, and we want all of the control at the most local of levels. Is that still a relevant argument point as we talk about call it counties, call it regionalization, call it shared services?
Whether it's relevant in the sense that it's a sensible concern is up for debate, but it's certainly relevant in that it's a concern. It's a political obstacle to doing this stuff, unless you do it in ways that are quiet, in ways that don't kind of rub up against that sense of we must be independent. And what I'm really talking about is schools. Regionalizing schools tend to be more emotional, more difficult than, again, sharing a public health director or a town sanitarian, which are fairly common things.
Mark Pazniokis covers state government for the Connecticut Mirror. Thanks again, as always, Mark.
But not county government.